All right. Now we're going to talk about Hawaiian culture, history, legend, many other things. We're going to talk about the philosophy that we call Huna, based on 7 ideas about life. That the world is what you think it is. There are no limits. Energy flows where attention goes. Now is the moment of power. To love is to be happy with, and all power comes from within. And effectiveness is the measure of truth. We're going to talk about this in a number of different ways, and one of the ways is with a kind of talk story. Well, I tell you a story, an old legend of Hawaii. And then we take that legend and see where we can go with it. This legend takes place a long time ago, of course. What we say in Hawaii, before Captain Cook. That means once upon a time. And this takes place on Oahu, on the island of Oahu. It's a time which was not a very good time for the people there because it was a time of drought. There hadn't been any rain for a very long time. The story is particularly about 2 people. The first person is a woman. Her name is Kealoha. And as we begin this story, Kealoha is climbing up a hill called Pu'o Manoa. And as she's climbing up this hill where her home is at the top, they'd lived there many, many years. But because there's a drought, she had to go down to a place far away to get any water. And so she's coming back. And the way they did it in the old days, they would have, this long pole across their shoulders, and they would have water gourds on each end, similar to what you see in Asia sometimes as well, but they had that here. And so she had to trudge up the hill carrying these gourds full of water. She had to do that every day because this was a time of drought and they didn't have any water at the top of this hill. So she's trudging up the hill day after day. Well, one particular day, she's trudging up the hill and she remembers an older legend. Now, she's part of a legend, but she remembers another legend. One of the very ancient legends of Hawaii is about 2 spirits. Some people would call them gods, but in the Hawaiian sense, these are spirits. And these are the spirit of Kane and Kanaloa. And in this old legend, they were companions. And they would travel everywhere together, do different things. Now, in the Hawaiian way of thinking, Kane was the name for what we might call the archetype of high places, high mountains, and fresh water that comes down through the streams. Kanaloa was actually the spirit of the deep ocean, but probably was associated with the rain that comes from the deep ocean, because the Hawaiians could see that that's where the rains come from. So both of these people were associated with fresh water. And this time, when they would go around the island, they were drinking buddies. They would drink the Hawaiian drink called ava, or kava. But they would also engage in a kind of a game with each other. They would challenge each other to find fresh water. And they each had a staff. But the trick to the challenge was very, very interesting. The trick to it was that they had to, the one who won would be one who was able to find fresh water, who would be able to poke his staff into the ground, and that's where his spring would come out. Now that sounds very magical, and that's a magical way of telling the story. But here's something very interesting. And to do this, I have to kind of get out of the story a little bit and bring it into modern times, and I'll go back to the ancient times. Because in modern times, it occurred that I had a leak in the water pipe from the main pipe from the street to my home. And we couldn't find the leak. And so I hired a man to come and find the leak, and he was either going to dig up the whole lawn, or for $200 an hour, he had this special new device that he could poke down and find the pipe and hear the water. I said, no, thank you, and paid him for what he did do, because I started thinking, I remembered something from when I was a kid I'd totally forgotten about. So I went to my garage, got a great big giant screwdriver, And I poked down in the ground where I thought the pipe might be, and I found the pipe. And then I listened at the end of the screwdriver. And I could hear the water rushing through the pipe. When I first heard this legend then, actually it's when I recalled the legend again, I realized that what Kane and Kanaloa were doing in those ancient times was putting their staves on the ground, on the hard ground or on the lava rock, and listening. And wherever they could hear fresh water running, they knew that that was a place to dig and find a spring. It was a Hawaiian form of dowsing. Right? Very effective form of dowsing, because it's all conducted right through the stick, or it'll be conducted through metal too. But they had this. They had the hardwood sticks, actually made out of this kind of wood. So here we are back. Kealoha's walking up, and she's got her gourds and carrying them up, and she's thinking about Kane and Kanaloa, and she says, "Oh, I wish they were here, so they could find some water closer to home for me." So she goes, and she's so worn out from carrying all the water, and she, fills the gourds and does the special little plants that she has too, and puts the rest aside to save, and then just falls asleep exhausted in her holly in her hut. While she's sleeping, she has a dream. And in the dream, it's not clearly defined who this is, but in the dream, it's a man who speaks to her. And the man says, "Kealoha, why do you go so far down in the valley to get water?" "Hey, why no? There's water right here." And she wakes up. She says, maybe this was a dream from Kane or Kanaloa. And she jumps out, but she says, "But there's no water up here." She goes and looks around, and everything is completely dry and hard. But there is a hala tree, and her eye is drawn to this hala tree. Now, hala is the same as pandanus. You know that? It's a tree that they make lauhala mats out of, and lauhala hats and things like that. It has very dark green, sharp, pointed leaves that usually bend like that. It has a lot of them. It's also sometimes called the walking tree because it has big aerial roots at the base that come out, that help the tree grow farther and farther. Anyway, there's this old hala tree, been there even before she and her family lived on this spot. And her eye is drawn there, and the longer she looks at it, the more she's thinking, the water must be under this tree. But how can that be? So at that moment, her husband comes. Now her husband comes, he's all tired and exhausted as well, because remember, it's such a drought on top of this hill, they don't have any water up there. So he has to go every day down into Manoa Valley and find whatever he can find, different kinds of herbs and plants and things like that to bring back for food. So he's up, and when she says, "Hey, husband, there's water under this tree. I had a dream." He says, "Yeah, right." He says, "That was probably a moe moe'a dream." Now, when it's used scornfully like that, this means a dream like you wish it were true. It can also mean the kind of dream where you make a wish in a dream. But he was using it to mean, it's just a wishful dream and not a moe ho'oko'a, which means a dream of achievement, a dream of accomplishment. So, okay, he goes to sleep. They both go to bed that night. During the night, Muka has a dream. And in his dream, there's a man that says, "Muka, there is water here, and it's under the hala tree." And he says, "All you have to do is pull it out, and you have water." And Muka says, "Hey," he's talking in the dream, "I'm an old man. How am I going to pull up a hala tree?" And he says, so he told him exactly what to do in order to be able to accomplish that. Muka wakes up, very excited now, because now this must be a true dream. Because his wife had it, he had it. All right, so his wife gets up and she has to go down for water. He goes down and starts the preparations for what the dream figure spirit told him to do. That kind of dream is called a moe uhane, a spirit dream. So he goes down into Mount Ora Valley, he goes down to the ocean, because he was a fisherman. And his name even means somebody who fishes with a net, like tossing a net in the calm water. So he goes and he tosses it, because one thing he had to get was a red fish, or several red fish. So he throws the net in the water. Instantly, the kumu, the red goatfish, fills the net. This has got to be miraculous. He pulls it up. And then he was supposed to get some tea leaves. So he does tea leaves. Then he had to wrap them up and he had to broil them over a fire. So he has to make the fire. Now, the way the old Hawaiians made the fire, they had two kinds of sticks. They had one which was called an aulima. That was a hard stick. And the other one was a soft stick. And that was called aonaka. And so they would do a rubbing. That's how they would make the fire. Okay? They didn't do this. Okay? They did a kind of a trough, kind of plow, fire plow. Okay? So anyway, he got the fire going, he broiled the fish. Now, the way the Hawaiians did it, they would offer this to their aumakua, to their guardian spirits. But they would offer not the whole fish, just the wonderful smell of the fish. Because the smell of the fish is spirit, and their spirit, all they can eat is the smell. Okay? So they give the smell of the fish to the spirit, and then they'd eat the fish. Well, when he ate the fish, he started to feel very strong. So he goes back up the hill. He gives a prayer to his aumakua. He grabs hold of the hala tree and whoop, rips it out of the ground. And as soon as he rips it out of the ground, there in the hole, here comes the water, the fresh water, comes gurgling in. Just then his wife comes up the hill and she says, "Hey, ka puna ho." She says, "The new spring." And that's why that hill is still called, to this day, Puna Ho. It's right in Honolulu. And if you ever get a chance to go to Puna Ho School, which is a very famous school in Honolulu, they have a seal, their school seal, okay? And on the seal is a picture of a hala tree with a spring of water flowing underneath it. Okay? It goes back to this old legend. Okay. Now, the dream was the story was about a dream. And dreams were very, very important in old Hawaii. They had lots of different names for different kinds of dreams. Now, a regular dream was simply a moe. Moe had two kinds of meanings. It had the meaning of to lay down, to sleep, or to lay down, and also to dream, mainly because that's what you usually do when you sleep. So that was the association with that. There's another dream which was simply called mi, and it means a dream. Nothing special about it, it's just a word that means a dream. Okay? But then they had moe uhane, I mentioned. This is a dream of guidance. The dream where you get knowledge or insight or intuition or ideas or inspiration or something. They had that kind of dream as one particular one. They had a word for recalling a dream. And as I'll tell you in a little bit later, this is ha'avina. And this is, no, ha'avina was another type of dream, I'm sorry. Ha'avina was a dream which was a gift. In other words, the dream itself was a blessing. Because of the dream, you might get well, or you might learn something or suddenly acquire a special talent or ability. That was a ha'avina dream. So that happens sometimes too. There was another dream that meant was recalling a dream, things like that. So they had all these different, because dreams were so important. They had special people, the wehe mo'u moe uhane, who would be a dream interpreter. And they would not only interpret the dream, but they would keep in their mind a record of the dream, so that different things would happen during a person's life. They'd look back to this dream and interpret the dream in a way that would explain or help understand, or even give the person the wisdom to make a correct decision or choice, even later on in their life from a very important dream. So they use dreams all the time, and discuss dreams, and it was a very, very important part of the culture, and they were used for healing. Some of the times it happened when someone had a problem in the family, well, they would do all kinds of things to help heal the problem, counseling, but and special foods, and also sometimes it was usually a kahuna of a special type who would do this. He would have the person mainly involved in the problem give them some food and instruct them to go home and have a dream, almost like a Jungian therapist. Okay? And then they would come back the next day and they would discuss the dream and what the dream was telling them about some deeper aspect of the situation, and then how to use that knowledge in order to heal the situation. Okay? It was a very common kind of practice that they did. So very, very important. Now, what does this bring us into modern times, into the modern world? What it does now is there's lots of different things out there in the world about dreams and about dreaming. And I've done a lot of research and study and practice. I have practically a library full of books where I've spent many years recording every single dream. When you get into that, can be close to an addiction, but when you get into that, you discover that you dream an awful lot. Now, when we're not used to it, we think, well, okay, I have an occasional dream. But when you start getting into the practice of recording them, why, 6, 7, 8 dreams during a night that you would remember, not unusual at all. Then later on, you discover that you're dreaming all the time. Hawaiians even had a word for a hypnagogic dream, you know, at that half-awake state where you have a dream. And they had a special word for what we would call just a daydream. Okay? And we all have those, and the dreams are going on all the time. We sometimes become aware of them. If you ever begin studying them, you become very aware. I made a mistake one time in doing this, because we call it programming, which really means to give instructions to your subconscious. And I gave instructions to my subconscious. All right, I want to remember every dream tonight. Okay? Because I want to write it down. All right, good. Have a dream, wake up. Write it down, go back to sleep. Have a dream, wake up. Okay, in the morning I said, let's change the rules. Okay? Let me sleep all night and then give me the dreams. Okay? That worked a lot better. But before we get into using them, I want to talk a little bit about some of the problems people have in remembering them. Because it's very common when I'm talking to people about dreaming where people will tell me I never dream. Well, you know, they're human, therefore they dream. I remember a story, I used to live in Africa, and I remember a story of an African anthropologist came there to study a particular tribe because all the reports said that the people of this tribe did not dream. And the only people in this tribe who dreamed were the chief and the shaman. And so he spent some time there, and nobody had any dreams to report, and he would ask them every day. Finally, you know, over a big tub of millet beer, this is a kind of a beer made out of a plant like sorghum, only it's called millet. And it's pretty potent beer. But over a big tub of millet beers, finally one of the locals got real relaxed, and he said, well, of course we dream. Everybody dreams. But our dreams are not important. The only important dreams are the ones of the chief and the shaman. Okay? So that was a kind of a revelation. And in my work, I've found everybody does dream. The problem is not remembering. Well, one of the things that helps a person not to remember their dreams is that they don't think dreams are important. If you think dreams are an effect of indigestion, like a lot of psychiatrists and psychologists do, okay? If you think dreams are simply the rambling mixture of the events of the day put together in odd-shaped mixture, well, hey, I've had dreams that got nothing to do with what I've done that day for sure. But anyway, there's people who think that. If dreams are not important, you will tend not to remember them. And the reason I'm putting so much emphasis on this is because that's 1/3 of your entire life, on an average, that's missing if you don't pay attention to it. And it's valuable. There's stuff in there that can help you. So anyway, if you don't think they're important, you won't normally recall your dreams. If you keep telling yourself you don't remember dreams, then you're giving instructions to your subconscious, and dreams will be more likely to be suppressed. Then the only ones you'll really get are the traumatic dreams that come out of a high stress state, that are called nightmares. Okay? And because something has to burst through, these dreams have information for you. If you're not paying attention, sometimes it's got to build up and build up and build up until it breaks through into a nightmare, just to grab you, say, pay attention, something's going on inside. Okay? It's a curious thing. Some kinds of foods seem to help you dream more. I've read some research on this, and I've done a little experimenting, and I can say it's not 100%, but there is a tendency. Now, the foods that overall that do seem to have this effect are cheese and fish. And when you have cheese or fish at night, there's a better tendency to have more vivid dreams. Now, another thing you can do, simple without getting into what you eat, is simply make dreams important by reading a book about dreaming. Invariably, when somebody takes the time to read a book about dreams, they start having more dreams that they recall. And especially if you want to put a little notepad and a pen by your bedside and say, hey, I want to remember a dream in the morning. Okay? This will help. Another thing I found, our memories are very strongly associated with our body posture and our state of muscle tension and relaxation. When you wake up in the morning, with some people, if you wake up, the tendency is to suddenly turn. And when you do that, you lose the dream very often. Because the dream memory was associated with that posture you were in when you first woke up. What I found is very, very often, if you want to, if you move back into that same posture, the dream will float back into your mind because of that association. It happens a lot. So that's one thing that's possible to do. Sometimes you don't recall dreams simply because you're under too much stress. And once in a while, you get up and take a shower, or you're getting ready for the morning and you're a little more relaxed, and then a dream will float it back into your mind that you had. It's because your body is more relaxed. Relaxing somehow in some way before you go to sleep, because you can go to sleep tense. If you relax before you go to sleep, you'll have a stronger tendency to remember your dreams. That's another thing. And finally, as a technique, if you want, it's possible to energize your brain. Now, there's a lot of ways to do this. You could put a crystal under your pillow. We have different devices either like that. You could put a magnet under your pillow. If you really want to go the kitchen remedy route, then wrap a piece of aluminum foil in plastic wrap and put that under your pillow. Okay? All of these things give off something similar to a static electric field. It's not exactly that, but it's in a similar range. And this kind of charges up your brain. Can't hurt you, but it charges up your brain, stimulates it a little more, so the dream recall is often more vivid when you do that. If it's too strong, you just won't sleep much. Okay? So you have to experiment a little, find the right object that just is intense enough to stimulate your dreaming. So these are a lot of different ways. Now, when we get to the dreams, most people get very, very focused on dream interpretation. And this is very interesting, but very, very arbitrary, especially in the kind of mixed culture that we live in today. When you're in a tribal community, there are certain symbols that are common to that community over a long period of time. And when people dream, they tend to dream using those symbols. And so the dream interpreter of that village, let's say, of that tribe, then is aware of those symbols, is aware of their meaning and context and relationship, and can give good dream interpretations. The problem today is so many different cultural backgrounds, so many different educational backgrounds, so many different psychological systems and metaphysical systems that you got a real hash out there when you are looking for dream interpretation. One thing it's possible to do if you want to is you get one book on dream interpretation, best one you like, and read it over and over again and tell your subconscious to dream with those symbols. Now, I'm serious. If you'll do that, you can have a pretty good system of dream interpretation going for yourself. But if you just happen to go somebody who's a dream interpreter, they might also be a good natural or professional psychologist, and they can probably give you some general clues, because, I mean, after all, you dream about a bridge, well, that could be going from one state to another state of life. That could also be establishing a connection between things. That could also be avoiding dangerous waters. And if it was a Hawaiian, he'd be totally confused because they didn't have bridges. And, so you got to be, you can maybe get some good general tendencies. I'm going to give you a surefire interpretation system. But one of them would be that pick one system, stick to it. Other than that, the dreams come from you. The dreams have the information, but it's a language that most of us are not used to dealing with. It's a pictorial language, generally. It's an emotional language. It's a symbolic language. Well, I found one key very interesting to do, and that is you recall the dream as best you can, or any part of it. And the most significant part of the dream, you pretend that it's alive, like it's a person. Even if it's a road or a tree or a flower or a rock or a bumblebee, it doesn't matter what you dreamed about. But you treat it as if it's alive and as if it can communicate with you. And in your imagination, when you're thinking about the dream, you say, hey, what were you all about? What are you doing in my dream? Now, the first thing people will say to me is, but the answer is coming from me. And I said, yes, so did the dream. Okay? And so whatever answer spontaneously comes up is going to be accurate. It's never going to be the whole thing because symbols contain too much knowledge. But it's going to give you a very good clue to what that dream was about and what that particular symbol was about. Okay? It's a little imagination. You have to be willing to do that. But if you will, you can ask each part of the dream, what are you doing there? What do you mean? And trust whatever you get. Because it's coming from you. And why not trust it? Who's to tell you it's not right? You can't trust someone else to say that. They didn't dream it. It's a very useful way of getting information from your dreams. Most of the time, though, in my family tradition, we don't pay much attention to interpretation. Oh, sometimes it's so obvious it smacks you in the face, okay? Right. But most of the time we don't go out of our way to try and find out what the dream means. It's about as useful as saying, well, we did some shopping at Costuless earlier today. I wonder what that meant. Okay? So what we do in our dream work, one of the most exciting things that it really is, because I've seen so much healing come out of this, is what we do is change, if the dream is a good one, fine. We appreciate it, say thank you, and enjoy the good feeling that comes from it, and trust that it will have its effect in our life. We don't have to make it happen. But if the dream is a dream that has elements that we don't like, whether it's a traumatic nightmare or whether it's just small little things, what we do is recall the dream, go back into the dream consciously, and repair the dream. We change the story, modify it in some way. I had a simple little dream the other night, in which I lost my shoes and in which a trampoline that I own tore. Well, came apart from the grommet. No big deal. I have no idea what that was about. I'm not going to spend my time trying to delve into any deep meaning of it. I went back into the dream and found my shoes and repaired the trampoline. Now, when we do that, this is what is important to know. The dream is involving, these are symbols of something that's in your belief system, in your ideas, in your memories, experiences that are going on in your physical body. It has to do with you. It's coming from you. These are symbols of something that's going on with you. You don't have to consciously know what the problem is, but if you fix it in the dream symbol, your body will fix it in the physical, emotional, or mental area that it knows how to do. We've seen this happen even with the most traumatic dreams. If you have a terrible dream of something chasing you, stop and turn around and talk to it. Or stop and turn around and make it real tiny and yourself real big and pick it up and say, what are you doing? Okay? That will be a healing when you treat the dream that way. And you'll feel different, and your life will start to be different. I've seen incredible transformations happen with people who have taken hold of a nightmare and changed every scary part of it so that it came out good. Now, if we have any real adventurers, I'm going to give you something else you can do, and then I'll open this up for questions. But if we have any real adventurers, here's something else you can do. When you recall the dream, one even dream that had a terrible ending, let it continue. Consciously stay with it, no matter what happens. And let it continue, and let it continue, and let it continue. The dream will always resolve itself in a positive way. It may take a while, and it may be scary in the process, but it will always resolve itself in a positive way. Now, I was put to the test about this one time. This is what I was taught, and this is what I used. But I was in a session with a person one time, and he had a dream of falling. And he would always wake up terrified. And it was a recurring dream, always falling and waking up and terrified. So in a session in my office, I said, okay, let's stay with it. Recall the dream, remember what happened, and if you start to fall, keep falling. So he's silent for a while. I said, what's happening? He said, I'm falling. Okay. Time's going by. Dum-da-dum-da-dum-da-dum. What's happening? I'm still falling. Oh, this went on and on and on. And I'm still falling. All right. I'm going to trust my technique. Suddenly I see him shake with his eyes closed. I said, what happened? He said, I went splat. Right there, I was almost on the edge of doubt. I said, no, stay with it. I said, stay with it. He said, I'm just lying there. Stay with it. I'm just lying there. Stay with it. He said, nothing's happened. Wait a minute. His eyes are closed all this time. He says, wait a minute. Something's happening. He says, somebody's coming. Oh my God. He says, there's two angels standing next to me. And they're reaching down and they're picking me up. And they're lifting me up and they're taking me into the sky and the clouds are opening up. And he just went on to this most glorious personal transformative experience because he followed the dream. See? And it did transform itself, and it healed what was his problem of despair or desolation or whatever it might have been in his life, allowing it to continue. Dreams are intended to help you heal. They're intended to give you knowledge and inspiration, but they're also intended to heal. They first show you a problem so that either you can do something consciously to fix it, or if you'll stay with it, some part of you will heal it if you hold the focus. Always happens. All right, so there's some experiences and some ideas about dreaming. If you have any questions about dreams or dreaming, it's open. Yes?
Serge, you talked about that fear. It's always about something that's in the future.
Yes.
But a lot of times when you have dreams, that's the state you wake up in, is the state of
Yes.
fear.
Right.
So, and that kind of relates to that story that dream that you just talked about.
Yes.
So that brought that back to my mind, that so your dream is actually playing out this fear of a future that you're not allowing to happen because you're waking yourself up.
Yes, that's right. Because the stress, you have a fearful expectation of something that might turn out to be wonderful. You've woken yourself up in the middle of a healing process. Okay?
But it's interesting because when you wake yourself up, or at least my experience, when I wake myself up, I feel like I've protected myself from that experience.
I know,
Or
that's...
I've
Sometimes when you...
myself.
Sometimes because of the fear, when you suddenly wake up in a traumatic dream, there's that feeling of having protected yourself or having rescued yourself, and that gives you a temporary little glow. Whew, thank goodness. But it's based on rules you have or beliefs you have about something being dangerous, whether the specific incident you were dreaming about or whether the future in general. And so, yeah, that's what fear, how people use fear to try and protect themselves from danger. Okay? It also protects yourself from healing, unfortunately, too many times. You can think people who won't go to the dentist because they're afraid of the drill, or people who won't undergo surgery when it's the most viable solution, whatever their problem is. Over and over again, we try to use fear to protect ourselves from something we imagine is going to hurt us. And people often don't let their imagination go beyond that to a benefit that could come. Now, one way I would suggest, although you've woken up and the fear has gotten you out of the dream, you haven't really healed anything by doing that. You've given yourself a temporary respite. If you recall the dream, bring it back to the fearful part, and then turn yourself into the kind of person who can deal with that from a position of strength and self-confidence, whoa. You've done the same thing, but in a healing way. Instead of avoiding the problem, you've healed the problem by changing yourself in the dream in relation to it. It's a complete, you're still solving it. You are still, in a way, rescuing yourself, but you're not avoiding the problem. Because avoidance takes tension and suppression, and the problem doesn't go away when you use that. But plunging in and with your imagination, healing it and coming out wonderful and being the powerhouse, wow, you have strengthened your self-esteem and your self-confidence several notches more. Yeah.
Sir?
Yeah.
How do these techniques of working with dreams, how do they fit with the Huna principles?
Well, first of all, the world is what you think it is. It's your dream. So the dream is all about you, and it's a reflection of some part of you. See, the world is what you think it is does not mean the world is what you would like it to be. It refers to conscious beliefs, subconscious beliefs, genetic memory beliefs. That's all part of your thinking. It's based on a word, ike, in Hawaiian, that really has multiple meanings that have to do with thinking and feeling and experiencing a whole range of things. But I found when I started to teach, so many people didn't even know how to think consciously straight that I translated that with that statement, the world is what you think it is. So that means change your thinking, you change your experience of the world. That's how we apply this in the dreams. You have a fearful dream, change the way you think about yourself, change the way you think about the dream, change the dream, you've changed your experience. So the other one says that there are no limits. Now, where we might apply this is, if you change the dream, this can affect your physical body, your physical health, your mental health, and your emotional health. The dream is not something separate from the rest of you. It's all connected. Change any part of it. If you change your diet, you can heal your dreams. You heal your dreams, you can heal your body. It's all connected. Now we say that energy flows where attention goes. If you put your attention on the scariness of dreams, then you're going to avoid them, you're going to build up tension, they're going to make them more and more fearful, and all that's going to affect you. If you put your attention on what you can positively do with dreams, then your energy and your attention create a whole different effect. Then we have the principle that says now is the moment of power. That's why it doesn't matter when you had a nightmare. Doesn't matter when. If you still recall it with feeling, it's still active within you, and the time you can change all of that effect is now, in the present. You don't have to go back to your childhood. You don't have to find out when things happened, why this was all. None of that matters. Change the dream now. You change all the effects of it now. Now, to love is to be happy with. What do we mean there? What do you love? Well, do you love being well? Do you love being strong? Do you love being physically fit? Do you love being confident? What do you love? And so this is why when people, regardless of the problem, when they come to us as therapists, first thing we say is, what do you want? We could just as easily say, what do you love? Because when they tell me I want to get rid of something, I'll say, fine, what do you want to replace it with? Right? What is it you love? And then that's what we move toward. Right? Then we say all power comes from within. Now, all the power for your life comes from within you. Now, within you includes spirit, includes your connection to God in whatever way you think of that, but it also includes your conscious will, your conscious ability, and the healing powers of your body that you were born with. Right? All of this comes from within you. When you go to get healing help, that's all you're getting, is help. The healing always comes from inside. The dreams come from inside. The power to dream, the power to change and heal the dreams comes from you. And finally, we say effectiveness is the measure of truth. By this, we mean that when you are healing something like dreams, working with dreams, use whatever works. I can give you the best ideas I've found. There's lots of other ideas out there in the world. What matters is, does that work for you? So don't get stuck with a system unless you do it consciously on purpose, like I mentioned, the healing interpretation book. That's a purposeful thing to do. But don't get stuck because you think this should be done this way. Okay? I've given you some ideas. You're free to take them in any way you want. Use things according to how effective they are for what you want to do. Okay? So that's how it all applies. Okay. Yeah.
So memories, or think of memories is the same way, right?
Yes.
When you were saying if you still have a memory of a bad dream, then that is still needs to be healed or is still
Sure.
able to be healed. And the same as with memories too, like if you have a negative memory in your subconscious, it's almost like it's concentrated.
Sure, let's do a little advanced work, folks. You ready for a few minutes of advanced work? Okay. This is advanced Huna. You can't tell the difference between a memory and a dream. You think about yesterday, anything you did yesterday, in relation to this present experience. And tell me it's not dreamlike. Depending on what happened, it may be more or less vivid, but you may have dreams that are more vivid than what you had for lunch. Okay? Especially if we go back a ways. I have dreams from when I was 5 years old that are a whole lot more vivid than lunch 3 weeks ago Tuesday. Okay? Yesterday's a dream. For all practical purposes. We can't touch it, and it cannot touch us. What we have are dreams about yesterday that we call memories. And as we know in psychology, and as we know in the legal system, and as we know in metaphysics, and as we know in Huna, memories can change. They're not fixed records. Even, well, that's really advanced. Memories in stone can change too. But anyway, the book you read today may not be the same book you thought you read when you read it before. Okay? But that's getting real funny. So we deal, when we're healing memories, in the same way that we do when we work with dreams. And we get the same effects. Yes?
I never have nightmare.
Okay.
Is there a reason for that? Because I heard a lot of people have nightmare.
Oh yeah. Well, you've never had nightmares. Either you don't need them to pay attention to things that are going on inside you, or you have so highly suppressed them because you don't like them. I don't know. I'm just giving possibilities. Okay. Or that's not the way your subconscious communicates with you. Some people have to be shaken out of their lethargy. Maybe you're so open and intuitive that information comes, you use it, and you don't even think about it. So who needs a nightmare? Nightmares, you see, no. People only get nightmares when they've been suppressing something very strongly over a period of time. They're usually suppressing either anger or suppressing fear. And if someone does that over a period of time, at some point that breaks out in nightmares. Yeah. Or another way of getting nightmares is to overload your body with something toxic. Now, too much of anything can become toxic. But some people, when people drink too much alcohol for a period of time, they'll have nightmares. Too much of a particular drug. You can drink too much water and have nightmares. And the body will respond with some kind of traumatic symbolic imagery letting you know, stop whatever you're doing and do something different. So it's always out of stress. Let's put it that way. Severe stress. That's what produces a nightmare.
So it's not abnormal, right?
It's not abnormal, no.
I found one of the herbs can stimulate my dreams is passion flower. And I told everybody when they tried it before sleep.
And did they? Did it help?
Both of them.
Passion flower as an herb,
Right.
like a tea?
Usually it's the tea that seduce you to sleep well. But personally for me and some of my friends, they have been able to after concentrate.
Concentration of doing what? Taking it internally or
No, it's
smelling it?
Like 1 teaspoon, you put 2 or 3, depending on your tolerance.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. Surely there are a lot of plants that people have used throughout the ages in all kinds of places to affect dreaming. Yeah. Kava doesn't affect dreaming directly, so it's not that kind of a plant. It might help you dream better simply because it relaxes the body and sharpens the mind, but in itself, it doesn't induce dreaming in any particular way. I'm going to have to do a little more research on that. I can't recall offhand particular Hawaiian plants that might have been used specifically for stimulating dreaming, but that's worth researching.
Sometimes people have very, very good intuitions, has visited that person, whatever they would say, oh, you go to dream,
Right.
And they'll ascribe a certain significance that that person actually is visiting them.
Right. Now,
What do you think about that?
Oh, it happened to me.
Yeah.
well, it happens to a lot of people.
Oh, okay.
Now, first, do some people go visiting other people's dreams? Yes. I do that a lot. And a lot of people find me in their dreams when they ask for me. Because I have given instructions to my subconscious to make myself available when people want me or need me. Okay? So I may appear. However, even regardless of that, the first rule of dreaming, it's always about you. Okay? It's always about you. It might be about someone else also. Okay? But it's always about you. So we always start with that assumption.
Because somebody that I know dreamed about me
Yes.
before, and I didn't believe it. And then he showed me the picture. It's me before.
Well, now, okay.
I remember 20 years ago,
May adventures continue. You're all welcome to visit. Okay. Anything else? All right. Well, that went pretty hot and heavy. That was good. Thank you very much.